Hey folks, how y'all doing today? Tim Walking Bear, Plant Whisperer. Well, the native rock carvings on the river found a little feather. I think it's from a turkey or a hawk, possibly an owl. Anyway, the rock carvings go along this point all the way out to the front, and then I think there's some that goes under the water. I have to come back when there's low water, but they're hard to see now. They're very worn. But anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Kennebec natives that use these waterways. Now see straight across the river right over there, that's a huge island. I've been there many times fiddleheading and I've explored that island. But that's where the natives would have had their village. When they come down out of the mountains in the springtime, they come down, the family clans. See, in the wintertime they go upstream and break down into family clans and smaller units, easier to get by. And then in the spring they come downstream and meet up at the big islands. This would have been one of the first big islands that they would meet up at. And they would do, it's basically a powwow. All the people would come down out of their mountain homes with whatever reserves they have from the winter, hides they've tanned and beadwork they've done, because that's when they did all their crafts and stuff. And they would have had maple syrup too with them. That would have been the last thing they did, was finish off making the maple syrup before they came down to the island to meet up for the spring gathering. And everybody would have a party and trade things and get to see each other again. And then they'd go all the way down to the ocean eventually, because you could sustain a large group of people in the summertime off the ocean. So the communities, by the time they all congregated down there, could have been 1,000 people or more, because you could sustain larger populations. And then you go the next bay up, that would be the Penobscot Nation, and then the next bay up would have been Passamaquoddy. But they were all the same people, they just lived on different waterways. We're all Wabanaki. Anyway, downstream is Norridgewock, and that's where a massacre took place a long time ago with Father Rassel. There were Catholic Jesuits living at the Norridgewock camp, and there were approximately 200 natives living there as well. The historical records say 160 to 170 natives, and then just as many of those Christians also living there. So a pretty good sized community. The numbers I got are from an elder, Penobscot elder, who was a teacher of mine. He's passed away now, Arnie Neptune. He was pretty well known. But he used to tell me the stories of the old times when we traveled with the seasons. And he told me the story, that as he knew it, about the Norridgewock massacre. And he said that when it happened, the warriors would form a line of protection, and then the moms would form a second line of protection behind them, women warriors, and then the elders would get the youth off to safety. And in this case, when the invasion came of the Puritans to wipe out the Indians and the Christians, natives and Christians stood together in the front line, the men did, to hold off the attack. And the women warriors, both native and Christian, stood in line on the second line behind the men, forming the second line of protection, while the elders got the children off to safety. And they went in all different directions. Some of them would have went east through the woods and would have probably hooked up with the Penobscot Nation. And some of them went south and west. They would have hooked up with the Abenaki. And then some of them went up the rivers. Some of them went up the Sandy River, because that dumps in right across from where the Norridgewock massacre took place. And they would have hooked up with Abenaki. And anyway, some of them that fled ended up making it back to the Penobscot Nation and to other nations in the areas for safety. But the ones that held back the line, that held the line to the very end, when most of them got killed. But there would have been a few stragglers that survived, because once everybody was off to, the elders and the children were off to safety, and the warriors saw that they were losing the battle and everybody was getting massacred and scalped, because they were getting paid scalps for the Indians. But anyway, there would have been a few that ran off at the end of it, And Arnie told me that there was a group of anywhere from 14 to 20 of them that made it to this island up here and hid. Now, they would have been men, women, and a few elders and some children on that island over there hiding after the massacre. And they formed a plan that they would wait till the next new moon. I think they came over here and carved on these rock carvings to indicate the massacre. But they decided they were going to wait till things cooled down after the massacre. A couple weeks, they're going to have a new moon. It's going to be dark. And they were going to canoe downriver at night and try to make it to the ocean by sunrise. And then loop up around the point at the ocean and go into Penobscot Bay and meet up with the Penobscot Nation. And that's what they did. They were here mourning for the couple of weeks and hiding out. And then when things cooled down, they traveled down the river at night because there were still enemy people in the area along the riverbanks. So they wanted to travel at the darkest night they could, the new moon. And they made it to the Penobscot Nation. Penobscot Nation people were waiting for them because there was already some other survivors that had made it through the woods and told them about the massacre. Anyway, that's my understanding of the Norridgewock massacre as told to me by Arnie Neptune, Penobscot elder. Have a good day, people. Doho, M. Sick Nolgama. Amen.